Craig ran away twice from the cult. The first time he got him back by telling him that one of the ladies in the cult who was pregnant, it was his baby. And he was like, okay, I have to go back and I have to be there for my child. It wasn't his baby.
We're totally booked.
Rock and roll!
Well, I think I'll leave you to your reading.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Rock and roller!
We are totally booked.
Welcome back to Booked on Rock, the podcast for those about to read and rock. I'm Eric Senich. Before we get started, if you want to support the podcast and get episodes commercial-free, sign up for the Backstage Pass from Patreon for just $5 a month. The link in the show notes, or you can go to bookedonrock.com. On to our guest now, Debora Masterson. She is the author of Freedom Quest, a love story. Welcome to the podcast, Debora.
Oh, well, thank you, Eric. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get to the book, you've got quite a background I want to ask you about. So you're a writer, you're an educator, a producer, a musician, and a francophone. For those not familiar with that word, present company included until I looked it up.
Oh, really?
What is a francophone?
A francophone is a person who speaks a language. Phone means the language. So francophile, if you say like a Spanish file, it would mean a person who likes the culture. But a phone, francophone, or anything that has that ending is a person that actually speaks the language.
Wow. How did you get into that? Have you been like a professional interpreter for?
No, I actually wanted to be, but being from the United States, I went over to Paris when I was studying. I started studying French when I was 12, so I was very lucky to start early. My father started learning French during World War II in New Caledonia, which is still part of France. You can see a book back there. It says Nouvelle-Calédonie.
Oh, yeah.
From World War II. And so I fell in love with the language and really wanted to become fluent. So I went over there when I was 20 and studied over there for a while. And I wanted to be an interpreter, and I went to the school for interpretation and, translation. But everybody else there was European, and they all were starting on their third or fourth language. They were so multilingual. I thought, this is never going to happen. So I stuck with French, and I'm bilingual, so which I love. It's great to be bilingual as an American. So there you go.
I work for the court system during the day, and we have interpreters, so I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
We do have people to help with that. And I did take French in like 7th grade and 8th grade, but boy, I think beyond like je suis and tu es and I don't know. I really
conjugations. Yeah,
I can't get. My teachers would be very disappointed. You're a Los Angeles native, currently living in Chicago.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've been here for just about 3 years now. I moved in on May 30th of 2023. So
okay.
3 years on May 30th.
Yeah. So your career in the arts began in your youth as a singer and dancer. You were recruited by Sammy Davis Jr. as a dancer and background singer performing in major cities throughout the USA. What do you remember most about that experience?
Well, it was a show that we toured for 4 months with Sammy. It was called Sammy Stops the World in 1978. And it was a great tour. It was amazing. He's one of the best performers, I think, ever, called a triple threat, right? And singer, dancer, actor, just an incredible performer. So it was such an honor to work by his side. There were only 11 of us in the cast. And, it was a very heady experience, I'll tell you. So we toured San Diego, Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York City. I got a chance to dance at Lincoln Center.
Do you still play the electric bass and sing?
Well, I started playing electric bass very late. Only 14 years ago, I started playing bass. I had always been a singer and a dancer. So I was primarily a dancer, singer, and I've always sang. And I've sang in bands all my whole life. My brother's bands, Craig Ingram, who we're going to talk about tonight, and other bands. I've always sang, but I didn't pick up the bass until about 14 years ago. And I played a little guitar in high school, but I never really knew what I was doing. And then I picked up the bass, and I went, oh my God, this is my instrument. I was so happy. I just fell in love with the bass, and I started learning music theory from that. And it really took the place of dancing for me because I can't really dance anymore, but I have that rhythm in me, and I can count anything. So the bass now, I think the bass is a combination of rhythm and melody. And the rhythm, the dancing is coming out in my fingers now instead of in my body because I really can't do that anymore.
Do you write music as well?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I've never written a song. I've never written any music. No.
Because I
Came
was
to the
curious to
music.
see if that affected your writing, writing a story.
Yeah, no, I write, I've written academic papers. I went ahead and finished a master's in French. So, I've written academic papers. I've written poetry, but this is my first long form foray into book writing. So it's my debut novel, based on a true story.
I read that. Yeah. What inspired you to write this book and write a book in general? Was it always part of your plan, or did it emerge later in life?
No, I never thought I would write a book. Now, in retrospect, I can see, it's not a total stretch. I mean, I've always been an academic. I love to read. I love books. I worked at the library when I was going to college. So it's not a stretch, but honestly, I never thought I would write a book. And I think part of that was I put authors on a pedestal. I never thought I could do that. And what
Same here.
happened?
That's why I have this show.
There you
I love
go.
having them
Well,
on because I'm amazed at what they do, what you do
yeah,
now as well.
and honestly, I also say I don't know how anybody writes a long form novel, if they're raising kids and working full time, but they do, and more power to them. It took me, retiring and having time on my hands. I actually wrote the first draft of this book during COVID. And the inspiration, was my partner, Craig Ingram. It's his story. It's our love story, but it's really his story. He passed away in 2020, just 3 days before the COVID shutdown, when everything stopped. And it wasn't COVID related, but that inspired me because he had such an unconventional and adventurous life. And I'm not the only one that wanted to write his story. He wanted to write his story, and a professional writer friend of his actually started writing his story, and I ended up writing it. So it definitely was a story too good to pass up. It was the kind of story you just had to write. So I was inspired by that.
Let's get to that story. Just to share with the listeners and the viewers what it's about and the storyline, and there is a real life story behind it.
There is, yeah. I would say probably 85% or so of it is true. But I'm glad I changed all the names and I'm calling it a novel based on a true story because for several reasons, people can't come back at me and go, "Well, that's not the way it happened." What are you talking about? That's not the way it happened. Well, everybody has their own perception of what happened in the past, and plus it was a long time ago. And there were a lot of stories that were told to me secondhand, by musician friends that I interviewed, etc. So, uh, I'm not sure that everything in there is exactly 100% true either. So I'm glad I changed all the names, and yeah, what is it about? It's about two young kids that fell in love. I was only 15 when I met Craig Ingram. He's Michael in the book, and I'm Grace. And we went together for 7 years, but the craziness of the times, sex, drugs, rock and roll, and the Vietnam War, we lost track of each other. And I broke up with him, at a very pivotal point in the story where we're in the band, Freedom Quest together in 1973. And he's trying to get a record deal, so we're recording the songs, and the 7 songs are recorded. You can stream them on Spotify from that band, that original 1973 band. and he ran out of money. And he was looking for more money to finish the album so he could get a record deal. And one of his roadies said, "Hey, I know how we can make some quick money. I've got a connection. We can sell a couple of kilos of pot, cannabis, and you've got all the money you need to finish the album." And so he did it, and apparently the roadie was working for the feds. The roadie was on probation, and he set him up, and he got arrested, spent 3 horrible nights in jail, and luckily the judge said to him, "I can see you're not a hardened criminal. I'm going to give you 6 weeks in honor camp, and I don't want to see you here back again." And so he ended up going to honor camp. But what happened was the band broke up, and I left him. And the record deal was over. Everything fell apart for him. And I went on to marry and have 2 beautiful sons. And he spiraled downwards into a really, really bad place, really scary place. He went back up to LA with his percussionist. The only person who stuck with him was his percussionist and good friend, Sodi Arcia, who, by the way, just passed away February 1st. Yeah, very, very sad. He had helped me with the book, with stories from that period, and because I wasn't around, I got too scared. It was too crazy for me. So I broke up with him after he got out of honor camp. And so they went up to LA, the 2 of them, and they pounded the pavement. And, there's a couple of chapters in the book where they're working their butts off trying to get a record deal. But the band had fallen apart, and nothing was working. And he finally sold all of his equipment and went to Hawaii. And over in Hawaii, he met this guy, very enigmatic guy, and ended up being involved in a religious cult. So, so there's a couple of chapters in the book which are really interesting because contrasting me raising my kids and Craig, or Michael in the book, over, being not only mentally abused but physically abused. He almost lost his hand. He was in the hospital for a week with gangrene in his hand. So, yeah, it was a terrible, situation. I learned all about this when we got back together again. So, that's another, I'm giving too much of the story away, probably.
Well, we won't give away the ending. We won't give.
Yeah, right. The pitch is, can 2 star-crossed lovers, soulmates, find each other again? Yes, we did. And yes, I'm not going to give the whole story away, but and the way we met the second time was crazy, because the way I met him the first time was he ended up being my brother's guitar teacher, and almost 30 years later, I'm looking for a guitar teacher for my youngest 15-year-old son, and his name comes up.
Oh my God, that's how you reconnected.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. We wonder if there's a higher power, if there's divine intervention, and you hear something like that.
That's one of the themes of the book. Yeah, is there it's serendipitous? Is it fate? There is an old saying that two people in love will find each other no matter what, because they're connected through the red thread of fate. And I don't know if you noticed on the back cover of the book, there's a Buddha, which I have. It was his Buddha.
Do I have it? Because I have the PDF version. Is it on that? I don't think it is.
Here, let me show you.
Yeah, let's see it.
So that red thread was given to Craig, or Michael in the book, while he was in Hawaii before he joined the cult, by the Dalai Lama. So the Dalai Lama said, we're all connected. And he handed, this was, as Craig used to say, before the Dalai Lama became a rock star. There were only 30 people in this classroom at the University of Hawaii. And he handed each person that attended a red thread and said, this is a symbol of our connection, the red thread that connects all of our hearts. We are all one. And he held onto that thread his whole life. And I've got it now,
I
sitting
was
in my
going to say,
bedroom.
yeah, you've got it now.
Hmm.
I mean, it's amazing. The story itself, it almost sounds like fiction, but it's true. And I thought of Charles Manson. I thought of Dennis Wilson meeting Charles Manson. When you get to that part in Hawaii when he meets this cult leader.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. That's right. Yeah. And I have to say, so yeah, the cult part was true. And when I started what's called beta readers are professional writers that we share each other's work. And I was getting the response from some of these readers of the manuscript. I don't believe it. I don't believe that Michael would join a cult. He's incredibly talented, extremely intelligent. I don't believe it. And, they say that truth is stranger than fiction. So I had to figure out a way to make the reader believe that what was true was actually true and that the reader would believe it.
Yeah, honestly, I read it. I thought, well, this is maybe added for dramatic reasons. I
Yeah,
honestly didn't, but he was in a very vulnerable place in his life.
there you go.
That's when they're really zeroing in on you. This person really needs
Exactly.
somebody. Yeah.
Exactly. And luckily, the cult leader, it required him to keep a journal. So I have some journals from that period. It was probably about 3 years of his life. And I was able to go back into the journals, and that helped trying to understand, where his head was at that point. I mean, truly, he sounded like he was absolutely mad, absolutely crazy. And I thought for sure that must have been psychedelics going on or drugs, heavy drugs or whatever. And I interviewed some of the other cult members, and everybody told me that there were no drugs. It was, no drugs.
Wow. That's surprising. Because
Yeah,
usually that's the tool, going back to
exactly.
Manson, that was
Oh,
his tool, LSD.
yeah, right. But he was using sleep deprivation and yeah, he was a real character. So that was Craig Michael in the book had to escape. He literally ran away and had to change his name, and he hid out in Sausalito, California, outside of San Francisco for a couple of years under an alias. So some of the recordings that he did, he recorded his whole life. He started recording his own music at the age of 14 in his bedroom with a reel to reel. And some of the recordings I have, I've got all of his masters reel to reel, which some have been digitized now by Sound City in Los Angeles. I don't know if you're familiar with,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
yeah,
You said there's songs on Spotify that you can listen to.
yes,
If you want to
yeah,
send me the link, I can share it with the listeners and the viewers in the show
okay,
notes.
sure, for sure, yeah.
Are they his songs?
Yes, all of them.
Okay. Yeah.
So Freedom Quest, there's 7 songs. Never made an album. Never got that far because of the drug bust. The marijuana drug bust. But he recorded his whole life, so there's a lot of music. There's not only the Freedom Quest album streaming, but there's also 3 other albums streaming of music after that. So you've got 70s, late 70s, 80s, 90s, all the way through the 2000s until he passed away. So there's a lot of music there. And I was singing on the band, singing background on Freedom Quest. And then, of course, we were separated for almost 30 years. But when I got back together with him again, we were singing again, and he was continuing to write. I always wondered, when we got back together again, if maybe that would maybe slow down his creative juices. Maybe he, how you fall in love and you kind of go, what else do I need? But no, he continued to write, and all the way until, you know, very, very short period before he died. His last song was called Grateful. So yeah. So I think he wrote and recorded probably close to 200 songs. So there's a lot of material.
You do describe that final scene. It's so powerful, and that's the you write so well. I mean, the way this is written,
Oh,
it's
thank you.
like the opening. I want to ask you about that. Like you open with it's like a cinematic type of scene, a concert, 1973, and he's about to hit the stage. His singles number 27, the crowd, the stage, the energy, the whole thing. It feels very visual, and that feeling that something big is about to happen. How important was it for you to hook the reader emotionally right away with that?
That scene came very late, interestingly. And it was a note that I kept getting. One of the notes I kept getting was that, okay, so that scene, the book always started prior after that scene. So when Michael was getting ready to go to work, and then he meets Grace's brother, and so it's kind of started chronologically at the beginning, and the flash forward scene about the concert and all of that happened very late. I kept getting this note that readers were concerned about Grace being too young. She was 15, and Michael being 18. And that was a red flag for a lot of readers. And I think, back then, we're talking 1965. Well, 68, excuse me. 1968 is when we first met. Back then, that wasn't such a big deal. But now with the Me Too movement and all of this coming out, and now you could go to jail, right? If you're, without lack of consent. So it's a different world now. And I kept getting this note about, I'm afraid for Grace. What's going to happen to her? Is Michael a good person? And all of that, having started at the beginning. So I'm already with the publisher, and I'm in developmental editing with my publisher, Atmosphere Press. And we're having this meeting, and she said, I'm just concerned. And all of a sudden, boom, it popped into my head. I know what I can do. And the scene came to me. I know what I can do. And it solved that issue, because then at the beginning of the book, you see Grace and Michael in a good, healthy relationship, working together, great synergy, great energy. They're older, so that difference in age isn't a big thing anymore. And that, Grace and Michael are doing okay, right? So it
Fit perfectly.
solved so many issues, yeah. But it didn't come until, geez, I mean, it took me 5 years to write this book. I've been working on it for 5 years.
It also works, like I said, it creates that suspense as to how is this going to play out, because you're thinking everything's going really well right now, so you know that there's a story here, so something's about to happen. Debora Masterson, the author of Freedom Quest, a love story. So Michael's on the verge of rock stardom. How much of his journey reflects the real stories from that era? It sounds like, really, like you say, most of it is. I mean, were there specific artists or bands that influenced his character as well, though? Are you thinking about that?
No, not really. I mean,
Strictly him.
yeah, it's all him. He was such an amazing person. I mean, there was enough just right there. I sometimes liken his personality to kind of a Jack Black, School of Rock kind of person. He was electric. I mean, he could do impersonations. He was the life of the party. We used to call him Mr. Jukebox. He had, I think, finally looked it up. It's called hypophonesia. So he had this gift of being able to remember just about anything he heard. So it was audio. You know how some people have photographic memories? He had audio memory. So I remember asking him when we first were together the first time, how do you remember all the words to the songs? And I think, this is a scene in the book. And he goes, well, I started listening to the transistor radio up against my ear at night to try to go to sleep, because he said the music was driving me crazy. The music going through my head. He said it would drive me crazy. So he started listening to the top 40 on the radio, on the transistor. And he found out in the morning he knew all the words to all the songs he had listened to. Yeah. So, and not only that, but he could remember the arrangements. I mean, he would go, "Oh, this song, it starts with the drums, and remember, then the guitar comes in, and then
That is amazing because, yeah, I mean, even the greats like Keith Richards had to record, he would hit the record button. And if something hit him in the middle of the night, he would play it, but then by the morning he'd forget.
yeah." So yeah, he had something quite unique in that and then if he went to a party and he pulled out his guitar, I mean, he could go for 3 hours. Craig, play this one. Oh, do you remember that? Yeah, he all the way through, no problem. So we called him Mr. Jukebox.
How did the Vietnam War shape the emotional core of this story? Because that plays a big role, especially as later in the story, we kind of revisit because there's a song that he wrote, I believe, during the Vietnam era that kind of comes back and takes on a whole new meaning.
That's right. Yes. So there is a documentary that we made. I produced it, and Craig, Michael in the book, uh, directed it about a high school friend, Bill Perkins. And he had written several songs, and he had this dream of making this documentary. And luckily, when we got back together again, I actually was working in the business. I had, with my husband, had a talent agency, and we were representing post-production and key crew positions. So I was in a position to be able to help him make the documentary. But I told him, I said, you don't know what you're getting into. It's so expensive. Who's going to pay for this? And you're not a filmmaker, you're a musician. But he made an incredibly beautiful documentary, or we made, I produced it. It was his vision, though. And the songs, several of the songs are in there that he wrote. One of them, Another Place, Another Time, runs over the end credits of the documentary. And there's a chapter in the book about the documentary. And as you said, it does come in earlier because Bill Perkins was a high school friend of his, but right about graduation time, they got in a fight over a girl. Yeah. And it was a fist fight. It was a bad fight. And then Bill left for boot camp down to San Diego, Camp Pendleton. And Craig never saw him again. And Bill, never spoke to him again. And Craig never got a chance to say he was sorry. He didn't know that Bill had strong feelings for this young lady. And it ate him up. So when I got back together with him, he said, I want to make this documentary about Bill. And I think part of it was, his desire to try to make it right. And part of his redemption, process. And I remember, I kept saying, this is a big deal. You don't understand making a movie. Yeah. And he had written, back in the day there was no internet. He had found all of Bill Perkins. So Bill Perkins was a combat photographer, and he's the only combat photographer in our nation's history to receive the Medal of Honor. This was our high school friend, graduated from my alma mater in Los Angeles, and so Craig found all of his footage. He was only in country 3 months. But he found all of the footage through letter writing and phone calls. And, he had done all this research and everything. And I said, but, Craig, I just don't want to know. I don't want to think about war. I just want to think about peace. And I remember he said to me, you can't know peace if you don't know war. And I went, okay, all right, I'm in. And that was the moment I said, okay, let's do it. And so we reached out to the Company C, 1st of the 1st Marines, where Bill Perkins was stationed in this terrible battle, and where Bill died. He jumped on a hand grenade to save the lives of the guys around him. And
wow, a true hero. Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And he had only been with them for 3 days. He didn't even know them. So we interviewed all the guys. It's an amazing documentary. It's only 30 minutes long. And then usually what I do when I show it is I'll have a Q&A with veterans afterwards, after the film. We do a Q&A with local veterans, or sometimes I've zoomed in some of the veterans from the film and all of that. So
That's amazing. Is that documentary still available to see?
yes, it's actually was picked up, believe it or not. We made the documentary in 2007, and it just got picked up last year for distribution. So it's on Amazon Prime and Apple TV.
Right
Uh,
now?
yes, you
I
can.
have Amazon Prime. Okay.
Yeah, you can watch it. It's called Above and Beyond: The Story of Corporal William T. Perkins. So I can get you that information too. So yeah, that's a big part of the story, because really, Craig, he was a short-haired, good Catholic boy. He was an altar boy. At 14, he went into the seminary. He wanted to be a Catholic priest. He was a good Catholic boy. And then Bill Perkins died, and all of a sudden his hair was down below his shoulders, and he was angry. He was an angry man that Bill had died. His best friend, who, he had always hoped he could make amends with, and changed him radically.
And neither of them got the girl. I'm assuming.
No.
So
Yeah. But you know what? She's still around.
she is.
Yeah. And I don't want to go there because, it's private, but, yeah.
Mm. In the book, you talk about the character Michael Griffin. He's on the verge of rock and roll stardom. How close are we talking to really making it big?
Well, there was talk of a record deal, and certainly the music is insane. I mean, it stood the test of time. The lyrics are so relevant to what's happening now with perpetual war and, activism, and they were very close. And then, the drug bust happened, and it all fell apart.
Thanks so much for checking out the Booked on Rock podcast. If you've just found the podcast, welcome. If you've been listening, thank you so much for your support. And make sure you tell a friend, a family member, share on social media, and let people know about Booked on Rock. And if you do like the podcast, make sure you subscribe, give a 5-star review wherever you listen to the Booked on Rock podcast. We're on Amazon, Apple, iHeart, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, and on YouTube Music. You can check out the full episodes on video, along with video highlights from episodes, on the Booked on Rock YouTube channel. Find it at Booked on Rock. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show. I want to read an excerpt from this book because this part here, it hit home for me because I've been in his shoes, Michael's shoes. So I'm going to read it and then I want to ask you about it. But this is the reveal of Grace, the character Grace, through a newspaper clipping. And you write, the envelope held a note and a newspaper clipping that fell out face down on the table. Dear son, the note read, I know this will be hard, but I thought you needed to see it. Please call me later and please think about coming home. Michael turned over the clipping and saw a photo of Grace smiling broadly next to a guy who looked successful, cool, and confident, upstanding in every way. The headline read, aspiring actress dancer marries aspiring director. He slumped to the chair and the clipping fell to the floor. Grace married a building manager from New York. Grace is described as smiling and confident and happy, and I think I'm sure many have been in these shoes, but I've been in those shoes, and it's a devastating moment when you realize they've moved on, but did Grace fully move on?
Yeah, honestly, no.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And, luckily I went through a divorce, and luckily my former husband and his wife and my kids are all okay. We're all okay. And, it was rocky for a couple of years there. It was tough. Understandably, divorce is never easy, I don't think. But, yeah. What was your question?
Well,
You
yeah.
got
So
me now. I'm
I'm
very
sorry.
emotional.
Yeah, I was just saying, the question was, did you move on? Because
Oh, yeah.
it
Yeah.
appears as if this person has moved on. They got a happy marriage. Everything seems great. You but
Yeah. Yeah, that's
was that
gosh,
still that part of
that's
you like,
such a
what if?
complicated question
Yeah. Yeah.
because um, in the back of my mind, like for example, we had gotten engaged for a brief period of time, and then I told him, I said, you know what, I can't settle down yet. I got to go to Paris and study my French and get fluent in French. And so I took off the engagement ring and I took off and spent 9 months over there. And, so I held on to that engagement ring. It was when we got back together again, I was able to pull out that ring and say, remember this? I drove by his house. I thought about him often, where is he? What's he doing? But I was married and I tried to put it out of my mind. And then I got pregnant with my first baby and I was just happy as could be. I retired from dancing and I was just 100% into my raising my children. And I, pretty much forgot about it at that point. I was okay. I was having a good life. I mean, you know, we, there's a saying that if you're in a happy marriage, you can see an old boyfriend or girlfriend and it won't do anything. But unfortunately, our marriage did start to get pretty rocky. And so we were having problems. And, so when Craig walked back into my life, uh, I, I was not in a good place in my marriage. So that did help also. But honestly, we're soulmates. I mean, he's still like with me. I, I don't know how else to explain it. Um, and there's a couple of places in the book where I try to describe that feeling, of it's like early on when he takes her hand for the first time when they're at the ice cream store and it feels like there's like a spark, like it feels like he's held that hand for millennia, through this all space and time. These types of feeling. Not everybody gets an opportunity to have that.
No, it's
You
very
know,
rare. Yeah.
I guess, yeah, because I talk to, a lot of people and they're going, man, I wish I could have experienced that. I don't think I'll ever experience that. And, but it's also extremely intense. There's a discussion that Michael and Grace have when they get back together again. And it's like, man, how does this happen? How do we get back together again? And they, we're try to be grateful for what we have and never get go down that spiral, that bad spiral that happened in my marriage, berating each other and fighting and all of that. And we promised each other that wouldn't happen. But you know, we were just so grateful to be back together again. And it's like, how does this happen? Is it fate? I mean,
Like a 1 in a million thing.
1 in a million, yeah. And that's another reason why, I would tell people my story and they go, "Oh my God, this sounds like a book. You got to write this." Like, okay, finally I did.
Find the Booked on Rock website at bookedonrock.com. There you can find all the back episodes of the show, the latest episode in video and audio, links to all of the platforms where you can listen to the podcast, plus all the social media platforms. We're on Blue Sky, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. Also, check out the Booked on Rock blog, find your local independent bookstore, find out all the latest hot rock book releases, and before you go, check out the Booked on Rock online store. Pick up some Booked on Rock merch. It's all at bookedonrock.com. You open the chapters, I think all the chapters you open with a really interesting quote, but I know chapter 14 opens with one that I thought was really cool. It's from a philosopher and social critic, Eric Hoffer, and it's faith in a holy cause is to a considerable extent a substitute for the lost faith in ourselves. And I'm curious as to what drew you to that specific quote.
I don't even remember where I found it, but when I read it, I was like, oh, this has got to be at the beginning of the cult period, because that's exactly what happened. He had lost all faith, all hope in his music. He quit playing, gained a lot of weight, just an absolute mess, and So when I saw that quote, I thought, oh man, this really hit home. Uh,
And they took his money too. It was a theft ring, right?
yeah, yeah. He took a lot of money from Craig's parents and the other cult members. Some of them were business people, and he, absconded with money from them too. And they built this incredible estate, 7 bedroom, 5 bath estate on Kauai in Princeville, which is some of the most valuable real estate in the world, overlooking Hyena Point. I forget the name of the bay, but anyway, so this incredible estate, and but once again, luckily, he was able to make amends with his parents, and he got that money back, and that's true. That it's in the book where he was able to. The cult leader made a fatal error. He never put anything in his own name, and he made a mistake, and the way Michael in the book finds out is another crazy thing. He got a phone call from a stranger one day who was helping his friends try to figure out what happened to their daughter who had been murdered. And he was not a private investigator or a cop or anything. He was just a friend trying to figure out how this young girl had been murdered. And in doing his research, he had learned that this young girl had met the cult leader. Now, the cult leader didn't have anything to do with this murder, but he asked Craig, he said, I saw your name, and, could you help me out here? What do you know about this cult? And Craig was like, yeah, sure. And so they spent a couple of hours on the phone, and during one of those phone conversations, the guy on the phone said, oh yeah, he's back in Hawaii. He and his new wife own a couple of properties on Oahu. And he went, wait a minute, it's in his name? And he said, yes, co-ownership in his name. And he went, bingo, I can sue him now.
Got him.
And he had a promissory note. He had a promissory note from the cult leader, because the cult leader, Craig ran away twice from the cult. The first time he got him back by telling him that one of the ladies in the cult who was pregnant, it was his baby, and he was going to be a father. And
Manipulation.
And he was like, okay, I have to go back. I have to do the right thing. I have to be there for my child. Well, it wasn't. It wasn't his baby. So DNA proved later on it wasn't. That was just to get him back there. Well, when he got back, one of the other things the cult leader did to try to keep him there, because see, he was one of the magnets for the cult, because he was so talented with his music and his charisma. He was more charismatic than the cult leader, and the cult leader knew that, and he needed Michael. And so one of the things he did was he wrote him a promissory note, and it was handwritten, and he held on to it. And once he found out that the cult leader had put some very expensive property in his name, he sued him, and within 9 months he got the reward.
Again, this is
all true.
Yeah, again, this is just so crazy. It's like, this can't really be true, but it is.
Oh, and then the cult leader. Did you read the part about how the cult leader died?
Yes.
The cult leader gets shot.
Yes. It's
that's true.
Thankfully, he's gone, and he can't cause any more trouble.
Yeah. So he ended up going from Hawaii to Canada, and did the same thing in Canada to Thailand. And in Thailand, one of the cult members the only one who had stayed with him for 30 years, shot him.
Unreal. The scene, that song "World on Fire," there's that scene where Michael's song is played during a protest, but it takes place during the Iraq War, and the people, they love the song. It was originally written during the Vietnam War, but I wondered if does that redefine what meant for Michael to make it in music. It's no longer about the fame and money anymore.
Well, that was made up. Well,
That
part
was
of it
made
was
up.
made.
Okay.
Let me say we did march in the march in San Francisco with, we went up to San Francisco and met with Joe in the book, but his real name is Rob, and we did meet and we did march, but the song was not played.
Okay. But the
Yeah,
message of that scene is essentially that.
essentially that. And the World on Fire song was actually written at that time, at the time of the Second Iraq War, George W. Bush's shock and awe invasion of Iraq. So that World on Fire song is later, much later, right? I don't remember. It was right after the 9/11. So that was 2002,
Yep. We're on there.
2003. So that's when that song was written. Yeah.
The ending is very emotional. We don't want to give away too much, but without giving too much away, there is a shooting star moment that will really move the reader. And I thought it was interesting that you chose something as fleeting as a shooting star to kind of anchor this lasting emotional connection. And I'm wondering now, did that really happen? If not, that idea, did it come to you right away, or did that
That
take some
really
time?
happened.
Okay.
That really
Oh
happened.
my gosh.
It did.
All right.
Yeah. That's all true. That moment is absolutely true. Yeah.
It's a powerful, powerful moment, and it we'll leave it there because people need to read it.
I'll tell you something. I wrote that last scene and burst into tears.
I'm not surprised. Yeah, not surprised. Well, I guess the final question would be, this is kind of philosophical here, but is this a story about two people finding each other again, or about becoming the people capable of finding each other again? In other words, did all that stuff have to happen in order for it to end the way it did?
I think so. I think, both of us talked about, oh, what would it have been like if we stayed together? And there's a scene during the last part of the book where I talk about, how I found his writings afterwards, and how he had expressed in his writings several times how he had wished he had had children with me. He never said that to me. He was always terribly respectful of my children and my former husband, and he never expressed that to me, but in his writing he expressed it. And we talked about that, and honestly, I don't think it would have worked. We both needed to grow up. Uh, our love was more of a idolization of each other. I idolized him. I mean, he was 3 years older than me, so talented as a musician. I idolized him. And it took me growing up, and it took him certainly learning and growing up through all of those crazy experiences that he had. But when I met him again, when I saw him again in 2000, I could see in his eyes that he had grown up and he was stable, and we could be together again. So I think it's a little bit of both, right? But we certainly, I don't know if it would have worked if we'd stayed together the first time.
Am I seeing a picture of him behind you there? I see it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Up top there.
I put that up here, yeah, recently.
I
Yeah,
honest to God, I was like, is that Jim Morrison at first when I looked at it? Just he looked.
yeah. That's one of the pictures I really love of him. Well, yeah. Oh, I miss him. I still miss him so much. It's
I'm
been
sure.
6 years already, but I really miss him.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I lost my dad 4 summers ago, and it's like he's there every day. He's there with
Mhm.
me every day. And some of the things you mentioned, I think you were alluding to, but there are times when I think, wow, hey dad, what's up? Because he loved Cardinals. And anytime if I'm going through a rough period or something, like all these interesting things happen. And then you're thinking, is dad here? And then inevitably, as I'm driving, a Cardinal will fly by my vehicle.
Yeah.
And I'd be
Yeah.
like, what's up, dad? How you doing? Because we were very close. So you just don't forget about them, and you wonder, is that,
Yeah. They call it the veil. The veil. This fine veil between this reality and whatever it is on the other side, it's a thin veil, and sometimes there's a slight break in that.
The Booked on Rock podcast is part of the Boneless Podcasting Network. If you're a fan of classic rock and classic film like I am, go to boneless.lovable.app to find over 20 great shows there. That's boneless.lovable.app, or just go to bookedonrock.com, the Boneless Podcasting Network. It is what you want it to be. Listen with confidence. So Freedom Quest, a love story, out April 21st. So this episode will run just before, I think, that date. So people can pre-order it, though. If they go to Amazon.
Yeah, or bookshop.org, they can get it anywhere. Yeah, it's
Okay, great. And where can people find you online, Deborah?
Go to my website, DeboraMasterson.com. And Deborah is without an H, huh? Debora Masterson.com. And there's a lot of events coming up. The first event is going to be in San Diego on April 25th. So I'm so excited. There's some of the band members, the original band members, are going to be there. And then I'm in LA after that, and then back to Chicago for a couple of events here. And
Very exciting.
So everything's on my website. That's the best place to go to.
Yep, I am looking at it here right now. You also have a YouTube channel, I see, as well.
Yeah. All the music, you can find the Spotify link on my website.
Oh, perfect. Then it's right there. Yeah, I'll just link people up to the website.
And the documentary. The documentary link's up there too. So
outstanding. That's great. Deborah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this amazing story. You're giving us all hope.
Thank you. Well, we need it right now, don't we?
We do. We sure do.
Peace, huh? Thank you.
That's it. It's in the books.